So, full disclaimer, I don't watch anime. And the only interactions I've had with anime are, I used to watch a little bit of Pokemon when I was a kid. I've watched a video essay on Miyazaki films by Captain Christian. I watched the first 6 episodes of My Hero Academia and then stopped because I thought it was garbage. And I've seen 2 episodes of JoJo's for a video I helped my boy Chuckles P make. And I've seen the Bayonetta movie and Redline while being extremely intoxicated. And I don't remember any of it except for
Fire the cannon at Funky Boy!
Fire!
So, as you can see, anime isn't really my thing at all. So, when I decided to give anime another shot, I very much expected it to end prematurely like it did when I tried to watch My Hero Academia. But, when I watched Made in Abyss, I was proved to be quite wrong. Plenty has been said already about Made in Abyss's strengths, like its world building, tactful use of horror, and unapologetic rawness. But while these elements on their own make the show interesting, what ties them all together is what really made the biggest impression on me. It's no secret that humanity, what it means to be human, is a central theme of the show. I'd even say the most important theme. It would be one thing if this was just a, cute little spelunking adventure, but questions of the self permeate every single episode of this show. It makes the show mean something greater through this exploration of the human condition. And I'd even say that nearly every character in the show contributes to the series' understanding of the human condition in some way. When I was brainstorming about what to say for this video, I realized that Made in Abyss defines the human in a very specific way. The show, at the beginning, subscribes to the idea of mind-body dualism. And for those of you who may be a bit rough on their ontology, mind-body dualism is the view that one's mind, one's soul, one's essence is fundamentally distinct from one's body. This is an idea that goes all the way back to the ancient Greeks, but the idea has been used by many different thinkers throughout history, most prominently Descartes. And of course, this idea remains fundamental to most every major religious tradition even today, taking on a spiritual connotation in addition to a philosophical one. And throughout the show, all discussions about humanity have this underlying assumption that the mind and the body are two categorically different things. And from the beginning, most characters are of the belief that both are required to be classified as being human. But the show develops a more nuanced view of this as it goes on. Rico, for example, represents the human in its most quintessential form, composed of both a non-physical soul and the soul's more feeble container, the body. And we're given many moments in the show that showcases the fragility of the body. And like I said at the beginning, this is the only relationship between body and soul that constitutes humanity. That's why, by contrast, Reg is treated so poorly. Because his body is presumably mechanical and inorganic, Reg cannot be human, and ergo he is given no right to things like bodily autonomy. Any emotion that he feels is considered a curiosity, rather than a serious form of self-expression. The characters see him as a mere automata, where any expression of emotion is seen as just a byproduct of his programming. It should say a lot that Rico even gives him the name of one of her former pets. However, the discussion about what Reg is gets more complicated when the audience sees Reg at his most vulnerable moments. He gets spooked and scared. He has certain urges. He gets embarrassed. And most of all, he cares desperately about Rico's well-being, beyond just valuing her utility on their quest. Despite Reg's superhuman or even inhuman abilities, his body still holds the soul of an ignorant, confused, and scared child. As Reg and Rico's relationship develops, the show seems to suggest that there are things outside of this typology that deserve just as much love, respect, and dignity as, for lack of a better word, normal humans. The show expands upon this idea further through the introduction of new characters. Ozan, for example, on the surface shares many of the same characteristics as Reg. Through the use of certain relics, Ozan appears to have gained superhuman abilities. However, even from the get-go, Ozan is described as a soulless being, just another monster in the abyss, transformed after years of being there. Whether or not this was meant literally or metaphorically at first is uncertain, After all, at this point in the story, we know that ascending from the 6th layer causes a loss of humanity, and maybe Ozan epitomizes the form that this takes, the loss of one's soul, the loss of one's ability to feel. However, in one of my favorite twists, Ozan is not as soulless as we first think. Someone who was once described as irredeemable becomes redeemed. The viewer is shown that, in spite of the abyss's effects, Ozan's soul is still intact through her sense of love and duty to Liza. The show seems to suggest that the soul is something that can't be lost. It can't be bargained with, or corrupted, or destroyed, except only through death. And this commentary expands even further with the introduction of Midi and Nanachi. Hearing Midi and Nanachi's story marks the first time that both the audiences and the characters are introduced to what loss of humanity actually translates to. And to my surprise, loss of humanity does not mean the loss of one's soul, but the body trapping one's soul, essentially forever. While at first Nanachi only speculates that Midi's soul is still trapped in her body, this is essentially confirmed with Riko's testimony after she wakes up from her coma. And this moment, I think, is one of the most magical in the show. Because Riko and Midi were able to sense each other's presence and communicate with each other without even the use of language, Made in Abyss depicts the human soul as a powerful, resilient, and loving thing. Even in the worst of times, it seeks out others and offers them the care that they most desperately need, oftentimes unconditionally. So, all in all, what does Made in Abyss tell us about the human condition? Well, to put it simply, to be human is to love. The conventional mind-body model of the human in this universe proves insufficient in explaining the Abyss's curses and blessings. Being human has nothing to do with fitting into a box. It has nothing to do with what you look like. Caring for others is enough, and I think that's a beautiful thing. Is this idea a little trite? Sure, but the way in which this idea is presented gives it new life and new vigor. I love how, despite how mysterious the Abyss is, universal truths like these propel the story forward. And who knows where that story will lead to next. Unless you've read the manga, in which case I don't care what you think. This has been 1C2. Thanks for watching.